Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. Hey there, Chris. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate this.
Jodi, my favorite voice actor and media geek. I am stoked to be on your show. You have such a fantastic community, and I've always thought it was a great thing after we've met at podcast conferences about you being a voice actor and having a podcast. And I was like, how come more people don't do that? It's such a great, fantastic idea, but I love the concept of your podcast, and you know I'm a super fan of this, and I get to talk about my favorite thing in the world, and that is audio. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I can see my picture on your screen there behind you.
I'm that guy, right?
Yeah.
You go to a concert at your favorite artist and you wear the shirt of the artist on stage. I'm that guy today.
Yeah. I appreciate you as that guy. Yes. Thank you for being that guy.
I had the guts to do it.
I love it. I love it. And yeah, I mean, you've quite the community going on yourself, deal casters and all of the stuff that's going on with your live audio and all of the audio things that you do, which I want to ask you about. So What is it that you're actually doing right now? What's keeping you busy?
I started a business after I rolled out of Sony Music. I was in Sony. I was a 28-year career at Sony Music, and I started a podcasting business, and it's called Cast Ahead, and we work with motivated entrepreneurs to do a show because, as you know, Jodi, most people, they want a podcast, but they just don't want to know how to do a podcast.
Lot of work.
They just want to be able to show up, turn on their cameras, flip their microphone open, and do a show, and that's what we do for them. And I had been doing it for years already in the music business for bands and artists and bands that I was in myself, and so that business aspect of making someone else sound and look their best was really just a seamless transition for me.
Fantastic. Yeah. So you're still doing that right now as we speak?
Correct. Yeah. So Cast Ahead is what I'm doing. Yeah. You mentioned Dealcasters. I also do a show that was rooted on Amazon, but we also repurpose it into an audio podcast and put it on all the tubes as well. We had this person named Jodi Krangle on our show one time, and she was,
way back when,
way back 2 years ago or whatever it was. But we go live on Amazon in the biggest mall of the world, and instead of just showing up and talking about product and doing that whole pitch fest thing, as Ross Brand calls it, we show up and do a podcast, and we started doing that like 3 years ago, and it turned into a real thing for us, and so it allows us to play in that sandbox of audio and video, and have our own sort of way of showing people what we can do as podcasters, live remote producers.
Yeah, I love it. Actually, I love your intros in particular. I really love how you go through some of your guests and you do the little clips and things like that. And the music, of course, is fantastic. Gotta love the music.
It's critical. It really is. It's like, I pull together those videos. I do it from the clients that I have as well. And I actually start with the music. And a lot of people are like, wait, what? What are you even talking about? And, there's all of these clips of people, and they're usually saying something really funny, and you get shots of people laughing, and you get shots of people saying something that's really sort of an intrinsic part of that particular show. But there's a cadence to it. And the whole purpose of an intro video is to get your audience ready to what they're going to receive visually and audibly as well. And so you have to, I call it station identification. Back in the day, remember you turn on broadcast television and they would say, you're watching, channel 2 or or you're listening to a radio station and, home of the rock, or whatever. So hey, I'm here. And either I should be here, this is the place I want to be, or I need to turn the channel. This is not where I need to be, which is, I think is fine. And so an intro video needs to let people know, hey, this is who the show's for. And this is what you're about to see, you're about to witness. And that audio is a huge component of it. It has to really just, it has to just feel right. There's really not a way to explain it, even though that's kind of my job here on a podcast is to explain it. But it has to feel like, oh, wow, this, without saying, oh, I really love the beat here, or I love this guitar solo here. It just has to all just blend together to kind of say, okay, boom, the show's about to start and this is for me.
Yeah, and it actually shows your brand in a very visceral way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. And you're doing this for other people now, right?
Yeah. I've been doing that since I started. Is doing that. I really, as far as the intro videos were concerned, I started doing it for one of my clients, who's Victor Antonio, who does Sales Influence podcast. And he saw a show that I did, and he said, "Hey, Chris, stick around after the show. You know how after you're done with the show and you're a remote producer and
Sure.
you do that little post-show, post-mortem or whatever." And he said, "Hey, I don't know what I need. I just want to work with you. I just was a part of the show that you produced. What can we do together?" And I was like, I don't know either, but let's figure out something. And so he goes, here's what I'm doing. I'm doing this show called Sales After Dark, and I'm going live 3 times a week. And I just watch it and give me your ideas on what we could do. And so his show started out with this countdown clock. And it was like started at 5 minutes, and it was just this clock just sitting there waiting for, with, that music underbeat kind of going or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
But nothing else. It was like his desk maybe, or a shot of him like, looking down writing.
I think it's actually automatic. I think there are certain programs that you use that do that automatic countdown.
I think
and
Ecamm does. It has it like built in.
Yeah.
And I said, this is what we're going to do. That 5 minutes is critical because this whole station identification thing. I said, you've got people that are tuning in at minute 4, at minute 3, maybe right when it hits because they're a fan. I said, what you can do with that intro video is you can entertain the people that are coming there to see you, right? And show them something that is just, gonna have them be entertained, get them encouraged, get them engaged, pop up their messages while that intro video is playing. And I said, but mostly people are coming in because they don't know who you are. And I said, you got to educate those people to let them know, hey, this is who this is for. This is what you're going to get. So stick around because this thing's going live in 3, 2, 1 kind of thing. So that's the whole idea. Now that was a 5-minute countdown. I don't do that for my clients. Like the bigger clients will have like a longer intro video, but I think you can kind of accomplish that in like 2 minutes.
Yeah. I think people's attention spans are a bit limited right now.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, we should talk because I've been wanting to do that for this show for quite some time. So we should definitely talk.
Yeah. And the guests that you've had, of course, are just phenomenal, which makes me even nervous now as a guest. I'm like, there's people that are a lot smarter than me that have been on this show.
People that are a lot smarter than me. That's the whole point.
Isn't that the beauty of podcasting? I think is the most underrated component of podcasting is the ability to network. And I think
totally, yeah.
A lot of these people, like you said, smarter than you, smarter than me. I just can't believe I've had on our show. I've been on their shows, and it's just like I never would have thought someone would have had said yes, and that I could consider someone a friend or someone that I could network that has led to other business because of a podcast. And I just think it's the most underrated component of it.
I got to tell you, that is why I have this podcast. I mean, honestly,
Beautiful.
I am not making money from it. This is not
Most people
a
don't.
money-making venture. No, it's all about the connections. I think that's really the most important part of doing a podcast, because if you're not making friends with the people who are on your podcast and getting to know them better, you're missing out on a big reason for having it, really.
It's true.
I mean, yeah, it's a huge, big deal. I agree. Yeah. So when you're choosing the music for something like that, how do you choose that music? What's the process that you go through?
Well, I'll first kind of get a concept in mind, and kind of like, so I'll, previous shows that this person's had, and just kind of like visually watch the show. And then, I always have music in my mind. It's always been a component of my entire life, as long as I could remember, was music. And so I can actually hear music just by watching and hearing spoken word. It's a natural, just sort of thing. And to my detriment, sometimes, it drives my wife crazy. And, I'll just hear a song or a note in a restaurant, and I immediately just am distracted, and I have to identify, oh, that feels like The First Time by Foreigner, or, like
Yes.
whatever,
I'm
and
the same way. It's hard. It's hard. Especially when all of your best music is now like the Muzak.
Right, exactly.
It's incredible. Walking through the grocery store is an adventure now.
God, yeah, and it can be depressing. Like, oh God,
Yeah.
I remember getting that on cassette, and now I'm in the grocery store picking up,
And this is
Brussels
like
sprouts.
the oldies. Oh boy. Okay. Now I feel old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, back to that process. And the other thing too is I always start with the audience, because I can't pretend to think that everybody's going to like what I like. They just aren't. And so the audience for the clients that I serve, and the audience of the people that I serve, they may not like the same kind of music or vibes or whatever that I like. We all have, somewhat discerning taste. So you got to kind of hit the middle of the road, but you also have to really understand who that person is that you're serving first and foremost, and go, okay, this person is approximately this age, male, female, like has these struggles, probably, this type of audio would work with this show. You don't want to, like Dealcasters you were on, that is high energy, it's tech, it's, we're going live on Amazon. We want it to be excited. We want people when they join, like, boom, we are ready to go. This is, and so it's high energy. It's, it's not like Metallica energy, but it's, it's like, you're gonna like this is pretty high energy. Whereas another show that I do, it's called The Big Ticket Life, with Jeff Janakovo. He's like a big Johnny Cash fan. He's got a belt buckle. He drives a truck. And, he serves a very particular type of entrepreneur and business leader. And so I'm not going to put something that sounds like Taylor Swift underneath his intro video. It just doesn't fit. And I think one of the probably most underutilized and skill that any content creator could have is their judgment. And so it really takes great judgment to understand, like, don't wait until last minute before you start to think about the audio component, in this case music, for any type of intro video, because that really can be the secret sauce to whatever you're doing.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're preaching to the choir here.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I always am amazed. And this is partially the reason why I have this podcast as well. I was being called on as a voice actor at the last second. They hadn't given any thought to audio at all until I was being hired. And that just made me do a bit of a double take, because that influences the feel of the entire project.
Right.
That audio, that sound, the sound design, the voiceover that you use, the tone that you put into that voiceover, or, the emotion that you're trying to get across with the music you're using. It's all part and parcel of the emotion, the true empathy that you're supposed to feel with this piece. And leaving it to the last second, or not giving it any thought until the thing is almost done, just made no sense to me at all. So
why do you think that is? Do you think it's because people don't know when audio actually makes them feel these emotions, and they just think it's something else, and they don't know why? Is it sort of that ignorance to that process? or it's like they're seeing these shiny objects of videos and things like that, and they oh yeah, now we got to figure out the audio component. Why do you think that is?
I think that it is subconscious. I think that we notice sound when it's not good more than we notice when it's really good.
That's right. Yeah.
And unfortunately, that means that people consciously don't pay as much attention to it as they should. Again, another reason why I talk about this, because I think that sound influences us in so many different ways, in so many aspects of our lives, and we don't understand what it's doing to us, both bad and good. Because, I mean, there's all sorts of noise pollution out there these days that's super bad for us. And when you're sleeping, I mean, most people don't wear earplugs when they're sleeping. They, their ears are open. So if you're sleeping in a noisy environment, now, I mean, there's sort of two thoughts on this as well, because some people like to have white noise that distracts them and lets their brain calm down a bit. I know Dave Jackson has talked about tinnitus. And so, you don't want to have the silence because otherwise your head starts ringing.
Right.
So, there are actually reasons why you might want to have noise, white noise in your background when you're sleeping. But if it's just noise, that can actually hurt you. Yeah. And I've talked about this in hospitals as well, because people in hospitals are listening to the beeps of the machines that are around them. Yeah. And it's really hard to actually get any rest. Wow. And all of those machines are alarming. They don't need to be alarming. They're really there just for maintenance. They're really there just to tell people what's going on with you. Mm-hmm. They're not supposed to be an alarm, but they end up sounding alarming to the people who are trying to rest in the hospital environment. And I'm not just talking about the patients. I'm talking about the doctors and the nurses and the custodians and like everybody who works there. It's hard on everybody. I know, and I've probably said this before I know I've said it on this podcast and probably on many others, that the person that I interviewed, he said his mother-in-law was a nurse and she called it a beeping hellscape.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So noise pollution is a big thing too. So it's not just about the good sound, but also rooting out the bad sound and not letting it overwhelm you. And otherwise, we're not very conscious of it, which is really unfortunate because it does really influence our entire lives everywhere we go. It's amazing.
It's true. And I think what we're seeing, especially now, in terms of, if you're watching television or YouTube or any of these things, when someone considers audio last, for someone like us, because we're doing it every day and, it's stark for us. It may not be as stark for others when someone joins from their home studio and all you hear is the echo chamber, right? Oh, yeah. And it just is like, and then you've got people that they're remoting in from a studio where they have actual professional audio setups. And the disparity between these two is absolutely, for me, horrifying. And I'm thinking to myself, there are tons of people getting paid lots of money to do this. And how on earth did someone not send this person a microphone, throw some fluffy stuff in their room, or whatever it would take to bring an actual celebrity or someone into a particular show and not think that can maybe not cause people to turn the channel, but it will definitely not be as intimate. And the disparity is part of the experience. And so if you spend a lot of money on this experience, why are we not doing that? Why are we not saying, this is imperative for us to make sure that this audio doesn't sound like our people that we have are in echo chambers if they can't be in the studio live?
Oh yeah, and I remember the when the pandemic was in full swing, and all of the late night hosts were going in there, doing them from their house,
Yeah.
right? And you remember the awful audio,
Oh,
like.
yeah.
Oh my God, I was like, these people work on sound stages all day long, and I guess they don't think about it in their own space. But
Right.
you were talking about the really stark disparity between the audio you're getting on a show and the audio that they were getting in their house when they just had to do it themselves. It was bad.
Right.
It was really bad. And I know I'm not the only one who noticed, even though I do this every day. So, yeah, really scary. And I think that a lot of people who come on podcasts don't really pay attention to that either. So, if you want to be a really good guest, you really have to think about your own sound setup, not just the video.
Yeah, and I think that's if there's something, Jodi, that I deal with most, it's that. And I used to overwhelm people with the information that they would need to make sure that everything sounds its best and looks its best, because I do live video shows for the most part. And it just was too much for most people, because unlike, the pandemic example where you've got people that are, that have had other people handle their sound, their AV for years and years and years, and all of a sudden they've got to pop open a laptop and join their own shows. You've got these other people who've maybe for the first time ever are showing up on a show. And they're like, okay, well, I do want to make sure it's the best. I even have a little budget, and I can do that. And so really where I start with most people is I just say, listen, our number one goal is that everyone can not just hear you, but understand you. And so in order to do that, you just have to make sure that you have an external mic. It's close to your face so that you're speaking across it and not into it, because there's this thing called plosives. When you say words like pizza, it's going to blow out the diaphragm, and we can't do anything about it, and it could send people running for the hills. Get in a small room, throw some fluffy stuff around. None of this costs any money. And that alone has made people go, oh my God, thank you so much for doing that, because I never knew that. And every time we would go live on Amazon, Jodi, we would say that to people. It was just a part of the thing, because everyone always wants to know first, what microphone should I buy? We don't answer them until we kind of roll out everything. And we say, listen, there are a gazillion different kinds of microphones.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know what room you're in. I don't know what kind of show you're in. There are some people that it's all about how it looks, which is fine. But you got to make sure it sounds good too. You can have the prettiest microphone in the world and it could sound like hot garbage. So you have to kind of, exactly. But somehow the buttery smooth voice of Jodi Krangle, who's pointing at her microphone, those that are listening to it right now. And there's a reason why you should watch this on video if you're listening only on audio, is because you get to see Jodi's beautiful microphone. But
it is very cool.
Yeah, I think it's like people just need to understand you won't hesitate to buy your kid an Xbox, but you won't take maybe half that amount of money and budget for a dynamic microphone that could cost you $50, a pair of headphones, because, and why? That's the other reason why. It's like, why do you need to have headphones in your ears? I see these people at radio stations with them on,
I was going to ask you. Yes. Yeah. So what is the point of that? Why? I mean, I'd love for you to explain how that works.
Well, for the most part, when you're doing a live show and you have, the audio coming out of your computer or out of speakers in your local area, that sound is going to bounce off of anything that it can bounce off of. Glass. So in front of me right now, I have all these screens, which is a terrible thing, right, for audio. But, we just have to do it. There's no way for me to see Jodi Krangle without a screen in front of me. But when it comes out of that speaker, it's going to go into your microphone. And what the experience is on the other end is a dual version of your voice slapping back just slightly later, and what people call echo. So there's this thing called echo cancellation on all these things, which kind of does the job, but then it's altering your audio even more. It's throwing some compression technology and all kinds of, AI, wizardry and hijinks on it. And so it's just not going to sound authentically like you, but the headphones allows that audio to go into your ears and only your ears and not come out of your ears and back into your microphone. And so that's key. But I also tell people, even if they're doing a solo episode, to do headphones. And people are like, well, you don't need to worry about echo cancellation there. But what you do need to do is you need to hear yourself. And if you're blowing plosives during a show, you're never going to hear it if you don't have headphones on. And so it's key.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. One of the other things that echo cancellation does, and what I really hate about it, is it suppresses someone else's voice if they're talking at the same time you are.
Yeah.
So it just, yeah. So then you just lose someone's voice. So I always make sure that anyone who comes on this podcast, especially when we're talking about sound.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I want to make sure that this sound is as good as possible.
Yeah, so imagine if this podcast sounded like crap. It would be good for business.
Not exactly, kind of got to walk the walk.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, echo cancellation is key. If I can't turn that off, then I don't have a podcast. I mean, audio-wise, it just sounds pretty awful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I got to make sure. It's actually in my intake form. I have them say, yes, I have headphones. And then, if they have to click no, I say, well, then get some and we'll have an interview. I mean, pretty much.
In a way, it kind of it qualifies people to be on a show. Like if you're serious about this and you want to take your show seriously, then you should be serious. I mean, everybody buys an iPhone or an Android phone, and these are they come with earbuds. At a minimum, you can use those and plug them in somewhere. And so if you're okay with investing in that, why are you not okay with investing that same sort of mentality by coming on a particular show? And so I think that's a good little thing to have on there. It's like, listen, if you're serious about this, you need to have headphones. And if you don't show up with any, then you're kind of wasting both of our times.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.